Man, there are a surprisingly large amount of good anime this season. I'm not gonna lie, when this season originally started, I had my doubts, but I have picked up a ton of spare shows this season, and I've only dropped one or two, specifically the foot fetish anime, for those of you who are curious. But one of the anime I knew was going to be solid from the absolute beginning of this season was Life as an Ordinary Guy Who Reincarnated into a Total Fantasy Knockout. Okay, terrible light novel name aside, this show has been one of my guilty pleasures for this season. And surprisingly enough, I haven't mentioned this show in any of my videos. So, screw it. I like this show, so I'm gonna make you guys listen to me rant about why it just fulfills my romance-loving heart. The TLDR is it's kind of your standard isekai anime. Tachibana and Jinguji are two mid-30s-year-old businessmen who are on their way home after a night of drinking. Actually, maybe this isn't that generic of an isekai. It's weird that they're both in their mid-30s. Sorry. Anyway, a goddess from another land approaches them and, without their permission, grants both of their wishes and teleports them to her world. Tachibana was drunk and raving about how much easier his life would be if he was just some hot chick, and Jinguji was complaining about how he just wants to get Tachibana home. So, in their new world, Tachibana gets turned into the most attractive girl in the world, whereas Jinguji gets the ability to summon a door to Tachibana's apartment, but it's like in this weird, empty void place now. Basically, the second they get teleported, they talk shit straight to their goddess, and the goddess gets mad and curses them to fall in love. And comedy ensues. I think what really makes this anime for me is how zany all the characters are. Jinguji is this super hard-headed perfectionist who refuses to ever admit he is wrong, whereas Tachibana was sort of this lofty idiot who has a bad habit of getting into lots of trouble. The reason the comedy works so well is because both characters are clearly in love with each other, but try their absolute hardest to resist. And the fact that Tachibana is a character who is so attractive that literally any male character who sees her basically immediately confesses their love and tries to marry her, which makes everything all the more chaotic. The standard episode goes like this. Jinguji and Tachibana get into some sort of fight. They walk away from each other and vent. Somehow Tachibana gets into some kind of crazy trouble, and Jinguji refuses to help her because he thinks she's just playing him for a fool. And finally he decides to help her, usually after having some sort of stupid epiphany. I think it's all the better that he does this because Jinguji is clearly very book smart, but terrible when it comes to reading other people's emotions or the room. Whereas Tachibana is surprisingly good at understanding emotions and reading the room, while being a complete idiot in just about everything else. It makes for a lot of wholesome moments where they're both technically in the right over a certain problem, and usually by the end they resolve it together. And I cannot talk about this anime without mentioning the side characters. There's Schwartz von Lichtenstein Lohengram, the third person who was isekai'd. He's hilarious because he's an absolute jab at Kirito. He's just a high school student who thinks he's edgy, but is rash and makes a lot of mistakes and only wants to do things so he can get praise from his peers. My favorite moment with him is how he pursues Tachibana heavily in the first few episodes, only for Jinguji to shut him down by telling him the truth that Tachibana is actually a man in his 30s, which frankly is a hard realization all MMO gamers must come to when they find a cute girl in their game. Another fantastic side character is Lou. She is an attractive elf who tries her best to compete with Tachibana, despite her always getting crushed. I think my favorite moment is when Lou gets kidnapped to be sacrificed in a ritual where they sacrifice the most beautiful girl of all to a squid. But of course, they end up catching Tachibana and put her off to the side, despite her avidly protesting that she wants to be the sacrifice since she wants to be the most beautiful. And of course, we have to mention my favorite side character, Shin. Shin just comes out of left field one episode, and he seems to be the only male character not affected by Tachibana's charm effect. Originally, he seems very suspicious because he's clearly an assassin, and they assume he's after Tachibana. And the answer ends up being no, he's just most likely gay and super into Jinguji, which just ends up being one of my favorite twists in the anime. Now, is this anime one of the best of this season? I don't think I could say that. It's probably not even the top 5. As for a story, well, There really isn't one. It's the most generic, we are going to fight the Demon Lord eventually, but for now we are aimlessly wandering from town to town. But does that make this show bad? No. Maybe, kinda sometimes. Truthfully, this is another case of an anime knowing what it is. The show never takes itself too seriously, and although the show does try to teach you the occasional lesson, it's never in your face about it. At the end of the day, this show is a solid romantic comedy with some great jabs at other isekai, and frankly, it's one of the more refreshing anime to come out this season. So go ahead and watch it if you're okay watching something that's kind of good. Thank you.